Hi, Frederick. Got your questions, and so I want to answer them for you, but I want to do so with the intention that I show you to the place where you have the direct experience. And so the very thing, the very question itself, that identity is the very thing that that I'm trying to show you to, is that there's something that's observing beyond the identity. And I want you to have the direct experience of that. But I do realize that in getting to that direct experience, that there's an intellectual roadmap that needs to be built and a fundamental understanding. And so that's my intention. I don't want to add to the intellect. I don't want to add any more information. I want to show you a direct experience. And so when you ask me questions like, what does this do to you, which I had to write down here, and what do you experience and what states of consciousness, I'm going to go into that. But please understand, the practice itself is going to reveal all these answers to you. And what you're going to find is that the questioner itself, the very default mode network, the analytical mind, this, you can't take it with you to where you are going and where we are going as a collective consciousness on earth. And that doesn't mean it dissolves forever. It just means that there is a physiology and an energetic movement within the body that kind of flips the switch for this other state of consciousness. And so, um, as far as moving forward, when you feel the urge to ask questions in any of this stuff, and you feel the urge to intellectualize, um, that might be a good time to actually work with breath, or that might be a good time to um, step back and to understand that that question will always be there. And I want you to have the direct experience of yourself, and the questioner, he's going to be left at the door, and you're going to have a direct experience of something greater. Um, so in that process, there's the necessity of raising this kundalini, or raising this energy. Your physical body is the physiologic representation of a greater field of energy. And so putting our attention on that field of energy and then beginning to work with it within the body and intellectually understanding it is a part of what the breath can do. And so um, as far as what this does to me, it's like saying, what does food do for you? It's so multifaceted, and it changes day by day. And just as your moods change, certain days you're going to use breath work or use this technique in order to overcome a fear or an anger, or maybe your energy's super low or whatever. Um, like I had said before, you might, if you are a sensitive type person and you get around people who are, um, of a lower frequency, or you got some stuff going on in the lower astral realm, then maybe this is a way that you can use to quickly uh, elevate your energy and then bounce those lower astral forms off of you. So what this does to you is multifaceted. It can be looked at physically, and or you could look at it energetically. But the takeaway is, just start the practice. Just go and start to work with it, and then it will instruct you, and you'll have the answer for yourself. Um, so what do you experience? The experience itself is sometimes nothing at all. It's just getting straight so you can, keep your head clear. And then other times there'll be very, you know, big experiences. But you the identity that chases the experience again is the very identity that we're going to leave at the door. And once you leave it at the door, you enter into the passage in which all these questions are satisfied. There's a innate fulfillment that comes when the physiology is in alignment with the uh, energetic field around you, and that there's a coherence, or there's that feeling of unity between the body and this field of energy, this astral realm. Um, and so, what states of consciousness, the breath, if you do, the Wim Hof and the way I'm doing it with Dr. Joe, basically, what that does is it gives you a glimpse into um, what you might otherwise have to work really hard for. So it's like it can bring you to a state of consciousness where that dial on the default mode, that's the voice in your head, the narrative that's always going on, um, that is going to kind of dissipate for a second. You might have little glimpses into this world, and you're going to realize that you're not the consciousness, you're not the narrative, you're the one observing the narration. And so that's the state of consciousness, and more and more you'll become familiar with that state of consciousness. And as that happens, the energetic matrix, all the cool lights, all that kind of astral neat stuff that the matrices and all that kind of opens up to you. But that's not the end goal. The idea is that you become aware of the observer of the self. And so um, there's another way you can go about that, which is the like kind of like an old school yoga way, which is called self inquiry, and that's where you look and you basically ask the question, "Who am I?" That's the real old school way of doing it. But I think it translates better as um, if the voice in my head were me, would I be able to observe it as I am doing now? So you could ask that question of yourself, right? So the question comes up, and you're like, well, hey, what does this do to you? And then maybe for you, you go, well, if the voice in my head were me, would I be able to observe it as I'm doing now, and put your attention on that observer? And then as you develop that skill, what you're going to sense is a spaciousness in your body. Your body's going to open up to this and unify with this field. That's the meaning of yoga, is you're unifying, right? The two become one. So um, that is one way to go about it. It's self-inquiry, right? That's a long process, and it's a lot of conditioning. And I actually did that. I practiced that I still practice it, but it became very, ordinary to me. It took, I did that for about 8 years. And so that was kind of my entry into some of this stuff. So yeah, self inquiry. So it's like if the question comes up, like, or you feel the need to get mechanical about things or intellectualize things, it might be good for you to just stop and break that pattern and go, if the voice in my head were me, would I be able to observe it as I'm doing now? And like I said, the old school way, and you can read about that stuff too, is, who am I? That's that's ancient. And so what you are is that silent stillness. There's an observer always behind the scenes, and our attention being put on that observer opens up the stillness. And from that place of stillness, then these subtle anatomies align, harmonize. Dr. Joe says, becoming nobody, nowhere, and no time. Same thing, stillness, the black void, all of it's the same. And that presence has always been with you. Observe this. There was one watching within you that was a child, there is one watching within you as you went into adolescence, and there is one watching within you that early adulthood, and there is going to be one watching you from within as you pass into the next realm. That one is unchanged. The personality, that's the one that changes, right? So there's always been this observer. So where I'm trying to show you to with these breadcrumbs is to that place of becoming aware and familiar with and trusting in this observer. And so the breath is a way to kind of quickly get there because it's a physiology that you're working with. So that's what it does for you is it shuts down the default mode. It gives you a little glimpse so you know there's something else there. Part B. So there's also the movement and the necessity to awaken the kundilini or the lower energy center, and in order to heal a variety of traumas, you could heal just about anything. So as that happens, that contraction is like I said, the physiology is the expression of a prior energetic field, and so you're working with that energy and drawing it up through your body, and that is working with your physiology to open up the actual nervous system. And so that's where you get into the kriyas, and you get into the like the convulsions, the popping off, because that energy is basically has obstructions as it moves up through, and each time the more you practice and it hits these little things, these little barriers, it's such a powerful force that it's actually gonna um, it's its own intelligence, so we don't need to know what it's going to do. It actually precedes our own intelligence. Again, so the question is from this here, but if we trust the energy, and if you do the practice, then you'll see that the intellect itself is the very barrier to the thing that you're trying to heal. So as that energy moves up through your body, and there's this physical expression of that energy moving through your body. So, lastly, what does this do to you? It shows you the passage way. It can bring you the passageway to where that identity is no longer your focus of attention, and what we focus on, what we put our attention on, is what we worship. And so that idea that we're continuously worshiping this ego, our mind, what we do is we always put our attention on this identity that's asking the question or needs something, and all that. And so when we put our attention on that stillness and we find that place, that's what we worship. And it bears fruit. There's something that comes out of that attention on that stillness, and those are all the mysteries. And so there's a great satisfaction in knowing your multidimensional self. This is what you're seeking, is like you have this potential and it's latent in there and everybody knows it, and it's like, how do we access it? So this is one way that you can access it. And when you open up that channel, all the things that people seek, good and bad, become available to you. And so it's not a one-off kind of thing. You know, years will go by, and the experience of what you are as a multi-dimensional self is endless and boundless, and you are pure spaciousness. And so, um, what I experience is a multi-dimensional reality. I experience a movement of energy. Um, I experience sometimes very difficult astral, lower astral forms. I experience higher astral forms. Um, I experience my body shaking. These are all things that are part of moving that energy. And so the idea is to just try and not to have an expectation and allow it to guide you. And so I'd really encourage you to step back from the one that is doing the questioning. Understand that you are not the seeker, you are not the one doing the questioning. That very questioner is the one that I'm trying to show you a path past. That's what yoga is. That's what all these things are, is a passage. It's a path so that that questioner can be left at the door and you can enter the kingdom. And that's where I'm trying to show you to. So anyway, I hope that helps.